So in our last video we talked about why posture is important, so you can check that out in the link right here. Definitely watch that one first. This one's going to be more about the structure and how the spine works and how we can work on standing straight, because the take-home message last time was stand up straight, and a lot of people are like, yeah, I can do that, I can stand up straight, but you're doing it wrong. Trust me, most people I see don't know how to stand up straight. We cheat ourselves into thinking it, because usually if it's hard, you're doing it right. And people think, oh, it's more about shifting your hips. That's not it. It's about using the muscles in your spine that lengthen your spine. So that's what we're going to go over today.
So Hippocrates said, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. So it's not saying that first you should go get your heart checked or your liver checked. Everything we do today, we don't take care of our spine, because if the nerve going to your heart or your liver or your lungs is compromised, it's not going to matter how healthy the organ is. So we often wonder, this person was perfectly healthy and then they had a heart attack. What happened? And chiropractors can easily see when we look at the spine just how bad a shape you're in, and the spine will twist and contort, and ligaments will harden and muscles will deform, all in order to keep pressure off the nerves. That's the main goal, but it can only do so much until there's a breaking point. And you blow discs and the nerves gets pinched and you get sciatica, and the body's just doing its best to get pressure off those nerves. So how do we help it? What affects the spine affects the spinal cord. Any stress or direct pressure to the spinal cord could potentially be the cause of any problems and diseases we see today. This is what Hippocrates was trying to tell us. So people think, oh, I just got to exercise, right? But it's more of an imbalance issue of the muscles that lead to this problem with the spine. The multifidus is a big muscle here, and any of the spinal erector muscles, these little muscles that help stabilize the spine. They're not really that much for movement. They're supposed to keep us upright. And what I feel in the spine here along is I feel rigidity. And that's actually the ligaments that are hardening, becoming stiff to try to do the job of the multifidus, because we don't stand upright. So that's going to limit our motion, because we're creating improper curves. And it may not be that you're hunched over, because a lot of us have what's called sway back. I see a lot of people with sway back where they think they're standing up straight, but they're throwing their hips forward. So that's actually not changing the curves of the spine. It's still in proper posture. You're not standing upright, you're just putting your hips forward, which is making things look right, but it's an illusion. So we need to learn how to strengthen these multifidus muscles and these spinal erector muscles. What does this muscle do? The big ones here is it continuously is active in upright posture. So it's going to open up those joint spaces. It's going to give us our proper curves, allow the nerves to function properly. There's no pressure on them. And then the rest of the body can return to normal balance. The proper moving muscles will be more balanced. That's going to help prevent arthritis in our joints, because as the ligaments harden to try to do the job of the muscle, that's going to eventually lead to arthritis. So here in this picture on the right, we can see how these ligaments are going to be hardening to try to prevent this head going forward. So it's getting rounded. The muscles, the multifidus, is obviously not doing its job. So when I feel a spine like this, it's very rigid. It's immovable. Really, I can't get much movement out of this because there's just no muscle. And even if I do, it's just, there's nothing you can do. It's going to go right back to where it was. So this would be more upper cross or lower cross syndrome. So here we see the infamous sway back on the left side. All the symptoms we can get with that. It makes sense because the spine is just in a horrible place. What is not being used is those spinal erectors, which lengthen the spine. You see on the right, she's probably even taller than this other girl, just because her hips are back where they need to be, in line with the shoulder and the head. On the right, if we had an ear here, we'd see that it is forward to the shoulder, and the shoulder is behind the hips. So we're putting a lot of pressure right here in that lower back. That's hard on those discs because they're getting jammed forward. You can also see her hand is internally rotated because the shoulders get internally rotated. So we get a lot of chest compression here. And you're wondering, how can digestion even work here with that stomach so tight, the ribs jammed up? And it's just a stressed posture. It's going to create anxiety. It's going to change us into a sympathetic state, which is our fight or flight stage, where digestion and proper breathing are just put on a standstill. Our immune system too. So we're getting better oxygen, we're breathing better in this position, the spine is healthy, the ligaments aren't getting hardened back here. But it's going to take a while to strengthen our spines to be able to do this. So it's a lengthening that we want. And what I tell people to do who are in this position is try to press your knees backwards, which will cause the quads to contract and work. And then you want to put one hand above your head and pretend you're trying to reach up to hit that hand, not going on your toes, lengthening your spine to do that. That brings the hips back, and then you're lengthening the spine. So here in the middle is what we call anterior pelvic tilt, or lower cross syndrome, or athletic hip. And you can see the hips as an opposite to sway back, they're behind the shoulder now. We got that increased curve. And where people get really confused about this, and this is how I tell, one of the ways I tell is I'll have you lay down. Now in sway back, I'll see they can look like they have an increased curve. And as soon as they lay down, the hips are then forced to be level, and they're laying on their stomach, with the shoulder. And I can see then that there's no curve there. There might be a little dip right at the bottom because it's getting jabbed in, but mostly that lumbar spine seems very flattened. Not in the case here. When they lay down, the curve will stay. Another way to see is that the hips will be, the weight will be more in the heels. If they do a squat, their toes might come up, where that's opposite to the posterior pelvic tilt, the sway back. If they do a squat, their heels are going to come up because the hamstrings are dominant. So the way to correct this posture is you're still lengthening the spine. In both postures, you want to try to lengthen. Whereas in the sway back, you want to try to bring the knees backwards. This one, you want to try to take the pelvis and kind of tuck it. So you're squeezing your glutes to correct that. So you bring the pelvis down into this direction to get that tailbone tucked. So we're going to go over all these exercises in a second here, but these are all to strengthen those spinal erector muscles, to help it make it easier for you to stand up straight without having to try and force yourself so much. It's going to become more natural once you strengthen those muscles, because you'll just be held there naturally where you should be. So each of these you want to be doing in the morning and at night before you go to bed. That's to even yourself out. So you want to focus on breathing when you're doing these. So each position you want to try to hold for 2 to 3 deep breaths. So in this one he's squeezing, and he's going to be holding for 3 breaths in that position, or 2. And then when he's bending forward, same thing, trying to get 2 or 3 deep breaths in while you're going through the motion. That's going to slow you down, because the slower you go, the more you're going to work that spine. So, and you're also holding it, and your spine expands when you breathe. So when you're breathing from your diaphragm, getting that flowing of air, your spine is going to be changing, and you're going to be stressing it into a better position. It's going to be fighting all those bad habits. So that's what you want to focus on. Not so much about counting the time that you're doing it, but using the breaths as a way to measure. The hips are forward, so we need to bring them back. Bring those hips back, and we're lengthening the spine. That right there is the #1 exercise. A lot of people put weight over their head at the gym. Hips are going forward because they got such a weak spine. They sit in this position too, is what you'll notice. So getting up and out of a chair, getting up and out of the car, throw a little squat. You want to work that spine, because that's really working those spinal erectors, moving from that position. Now, same thing. You want to keep those hips underneath you. This is the forward bend, but you're keeping the spine lengthened. The idea is you want to keep the head in between the arms. That's very important. You want to feel each individual bone move in the spine as you bend down. And you're not rounding. You're keeping the spine lengthened. You're keeping the curves. The hips are not going forward and backwards on this one. Up and down, slower the better. This is the bumblebee. So you're using those spinal erectors, lengthening the spine. This is just helping reinforce it. So you're squeezing your shoulder blades together. And don't let the hips go forward. And try not to have too much curve in the lower back either. Here we got a lat stretch. There you go. So you can see the foot. Top part of the foot is on the floor, stretching one side to the other. A lot of people have one hip higher than the other, or one shoulder higher or lower than the other. This will help correct some of those imbalances. The idea is to pay attention, feel which one feels more uncomfortable or a better stretch. That's the side you might want to focus on, or you could look in the mirror. And also you want to find the dominant leg. Which leg is weaker? That's the one you want to focus on. WL exercises using the band to help strengthen those spinal erector muscles. So here's the T position. The first was the Y. You're bringing across the chest. The palms are forward, squeezing those back muscles. You want to hold each position for 1 to 2 breaths to really strengthen the spine. It's not so much about doing the motion, but holding it and doing the motion slow. The slower you're working, as in the other exercises, the better. There's the L. This is external rotation of the shoulders. And in a second here, we're going to show the view from the back so you can get a second look at it. So here's the Y. Pinching the back, using those erector muscles, standing up as straight as you can and lengthening. Here's the T. Lengthening the spine again, holding it for 1 breath or 2. W. Squeezing the shoulder blades. And then the L, you really want to look at your arms. Probably good to videotape yourself, because I learned a lot about what my shoulders are doing, because you want your elbows at 90 degrees, just like that. So in the end, the best exercise is life-exercising. Trying to use your spine more optimally throughout the day. You're picking up something off the floor, you're lifting an object. Try to lengthen your spine and try to use those spinal erector muscles in a lengthened state. Even if you're bent over, you're doing a squat, your spine could be lengthened. Even if you're going down to grab something off the floor, you can still do it with a lengthened spine instead of rounding and not using those spinal erector muscles. So in a very real way, bad posture is like doing an exercise wrong all day. And what takes the hit is the spine. And when the spine falls apart, nothing's going to work. So if we don't have the stamina to maintain proper spinal alignment throughout the day, exercise is only going to make it worse, because we're not going to be using our spine. I'll see this in people that are doing, doing a squat. I'll see this in people when they lift a barbell over their head. Their hips will go forward, and when they go down, they'll be rounded. And spine is not protected because muscles are weak, and it's harder for you to do exercises because that spine is so imbalanced. And over time, it's going to lead to arthritis, blowing a disc, and then you'll see so many people who just stop exercising because they hurt themselves. So we got to protect the spine. We got to get the spine strong before we can even think about exercise. And that goes for yoga and everything too. Yoga is great, but if your spine is really imbalanced, a lot of those stretches are going to make it worse. And there are the right ones to correct it, but the main goal is if you just strengthen that spine, you won't have to worry about it.